What's going on, everybody? This is Black Men Sundays. I'm your host, Corey Sylvester Murray. We're talking about generational wealth. We're talking about finance. We're talking about business. And we're talking about mental health.
It's a Black Man Sunday. Time to put all childish things away. I refuse to be the man I was yesterday. Gotta put my best foot forward and elevate.
And before we introduce today's guest, my brother Eric from Huntsville, aka Hunts Vegas, Alabama. Who do you have for our Black Men Sunday spotlight?
Hey, Corey, thanks for that intro, man. Man, the spotlight I'm going to speak with today is about a young sister, man, that most people don't know of, but I'm going to see if I can bring some clarity to her knowing about her. Her name is Claudette Colvin. Now, Claudette Colvin, this is a picture of her right there. It's arguably a sin in history, let alone last month was Black History Month, that many people are unfamiliar with Claudette Colvin. Now, Miss Colvin was Rosa Parks before Rosa Parks was known as Rosa Parks. Unfortunately, Colvin is just a footnote in the civil rights movement, when in reality, she should be celebrated as a pioneer, as the first, let me say that again, the first African American to refuse to give up a seat to a white woman. Now, about 9 months before Rosa Parks took a stand by sitting on a seat on a bus, Colvin did the exact very same thing. Now, what is different about the two? Well, Colvin didn't receive the same attention as Rosa Parks for a number of reasons. And this is because she didn't have good hair. She was not fair-skinned. She was a teenager, and also she was pregnant. Now, the leaders of the civil rights movement tried to keep up appearances and make the most appealing protesters the most seen, which is Rosa Parks, because she's, again, she's a little bit more attractive and a little bit more appealing to the cause. So that's my spotlight today, Miss Claudette Colvin. Now, Corey, back to you.
When I saw that picture, I watched a few documentaries like the last few days. Normally I play 2K with my man Kalali, but I ain't been on there. My 2K been Black Men Sundays 2K, and then I've been looking at documentaries, just researching guests, and I saw that picture. And I said, wow. And then for you to pull up with it, I said, I'm gonna get a shirt with her picture on there, man,
Yeah.
because that's a big spotlight. And first off, I gotta respect Alabama, man. I've been kind of giving you grief all football season, even though FAMU won the Florida, we won the Black National
You want the
Championship.
whole thing. Then
But
yeah.
but here's the thing, man. I was watching a Rosa Parks documentary, and I said, man, why is so much Alabama State going on? And the guy from my job said, "Yay, man, I'm from Montgomery. That's where Alabama State is." I said, "Oh, see,
Yes.
but you don't know if you don't know. You
Right.
Alabama A&M, Huntsville, aka Hunts Vegas, Montgomery, Alabama State, Rosa Parks, Montgomery. So, hey, man, we all connected, man. So I just
We
want
are.
to, even though I give you a lot of grief on Black Men Sundays, it's a beautiful thing that we have so much HBCU love on here. So many
Yeah.
blessings, man. We missed you last week, man, because the week before last, man, you gave us that poetry. I was kind of wanting some more of them poetry bars, man.
Okay, well, I'll have some coming up in the near future. But yeah, but you're right, man. Alabama is rich in history with the civil rights movement. Of course, Alabama is the biggest state that has the most HBCUs that does exist because of this and because of the separation and segregation that occurred in Alabama. Well, civil rights runs deep here in the South. So, but hey, we trying to do is be better, come better. That's the purpose of Black Men Sunday, so we can do better.
Definitely, man. Well, hey, I appreciate that spotlight. Thanks for the education. Because Black History Month just ended, but we do Black History Month every week on Black Men Sunday. So I appreciate you, my brother.
Appreciate you, man.
Definitely. All right, let's go on and introduce today's guest, man. We're talking to Andrew McCaskill. When we're talking about a cultural analyst, marketing executive, let me paint the picture real quick. A lot of people, y'all got LinkedIn accounts, but you're not a LinkedIn expert. This guy's a LinkedIn expert, a communications executive. Matter of fact, this guy also did DE&I for Facebook, global sales, marketing, and public affairs Also did the same thing for Nielsen as a global communications. I work in the news, so we know Nielsen. I get Nielsen emails every week. This brother's from Mississippi, living in Harlem. This brother has a degree from Morehouse College. You're gonna have to help me with the Emory University Business School. What is it? Goiz Vuera
Yeah, because what a school of
Business.
business. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So without further ado, man, Andrew McCaskill, welcome to Black Men Sundays, brother. How you doing?
Hey man, I'm great. I'm even better now that I'm here on Black Man Sunday. That's what's going on.
Yeah, man. So I'm excited to have this conversation, man. First off, I normally throw alley oops, but I'm gonna throw you a couple layups just to get the bus warming. Because when we're talking about like social currency, like as I set you up, we talk about DE&I, Facebook, Nielsen, LinkedIn Career Expert. But I'm in Florida, so
Yeah.
I'm really not warming the bus. I'm gonna just put you in the hot seat off rip.
Go ahead.
All right, now I'm in Florida, man. DE&I is not popping in Florida no more. A lot of those jobs they've been fully taken away. With your background, how is it important that the DE&I jobs stay a functional part of business America, even though states like mine are taking them away?
Yeah, man, I think it's incredibly important. One off top, thanks for having me. Thanks for introing me like that. I appreciate it. Listen, what we can't deny is that diversity, inclusion, equity programming has had incredible impacts on many of the careers of tons of people for the last 30, 40 years, right? Like, I'll give you a perfect example of affirmative action. We've had all these conversations about affirmative action. My father was a bus driver and a chemistry teacher in the Mississippi public school system before affirmative action came along. And because there were people putting in systems in place at some of the largest companies in the world, that said that you're not going to get these tax breaks if you're not actually going out and hiring equitably, right? And so my father was recruited to go be an offshore engineer at Exxon Company USA, which is what it was back then. It's Exxon Mobil now. And my father was doing the exact same type of work in terms of studying chemistry on oil rigs out in the Gulf of Mexico for Exxon. And because of affirmative action, my father's pay, his compensation, his salary quadrupled from what he was making in the Mississippi public school system, right? And so when you think about corporate programming and when people are forced to do the right thing, either by government compliance or by shame and transparency, most of that transparency has come in the last few years as we've moved away from having having to be compliant with government contracts and things like that. There's still a lot of that happening, but that transparency has largely come out of diversity and inclusion programs and diversity and inclusion offices about being transparent about what your numbers are, who you're hiring, how you're compensating people. And so we're going to still always need those somebody inside the machine who is holding people accountable. Now, I will not say that diversity and inclusion programming is perfect. There are tons of DEI programs and people who are leading DEI who don't have budget, who don't have power, right? That is rampant in corporate spaces. But for many companies, the DEI office and programming and the people who are serving in that capacity are really sort of holding the door around what equity and what inclusion looks like. And a lot of that financial inclusion and a lot of that sort of equity work is really what has sort of paved the way, particularly in corporate spaces, for many people to have the careers that they're having and to open the door and reach back and bring more people along the way, right? So I think that, I don't want people to say, oh, well, diversity and inclusion, it's going to go away in these places. I think we still have to fight for it. It is not perfect, but it is a system that we still have to continuously fight for. And I don't think that just because you lose a couple of battles that you don't go out and still keep fighting the war. And that depends on, that's regardless of what the politics are in a particular geography. But just like times change, politics change too. And I think that we can never lose sight of the gains that we made. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater on DEI programs just because they have not been perfect. That's the way I think about it.
No, I feel you on that. I'm just saying, man, as I'm in Florida, I'm gonna be honest. I didn't even know what DEI was until George Floyd,
Yeah,
the riots, all that went down. And then I'm seeing a lot of DEI offices are being shut down in my state. Employees
yeah.
are being terminated. I'm seeing employees in the publicist realm getting other jobs outside of that DEI. So I'm just saying, like, how do you fight for something where you're making your bread and butter? Because Duke Energy or whoever, VAPCO, whoever your energy company is, they're not trying to hear that. You still have to pay that bill every month.
Yeah.
So what can we do to preserve the DEI when you have the governors and you have big colleges are just getting rid of that?
What I say to the professionals who are doing that work that are getting that pink slip or they're getting laid off is it is hurtful. It is hard. But we've been through and overcome more. Don't panic. I would say pivot, right? Even if if you're in a geography and you say, yo, I'm a DEI expert living in Florida, um, and they're shutting down DEI offices all over Florida. What I will say to you is that there's still opportunities for you to do that work remote. There's still opportunities for you to consult, start to look at your network and have conversations with the people in your network. It is hard to pivot and to start over, but I will say is that like you can still do that incredible work. Roles change, but missions don't. And so there are people who are in your network that will be looking out for you, that will say, hey, I know somebody here. Here's how you can still continue to work for the individual. As far as the full body of work, I think that we have to start to look at, as consumers, particularly Black folks, right? We have so much more power than we actually exercise. African Americans contribute $1.6 trillion to this nation's economy every single year. And that's just the money that's on books, right? That's not counting the money that moves through communities that's not on the books, right? The lady who keeps kids or the lady who makes cakes, right? That sort of thing. We contribute $1.6 trillion to the US economy. We make up 14% of the population. If we were a global economy, just Black folks, we will be the 14th largest economy in the world, right? Between Spain and Mexico is Black America. And so what I think that what we have to do is to start saying, looking at the companies where we spend money with, right? And say, what are we getting in return with a massive amount of dollars that we spend? Because people oftentimes want to make it seem like only wealth is power. But yeah, actual spending money, all money is power. And so when we start to look at collectively what our power is, a lot of our collective power comes from the industry and the engine that we are in terms of keeping the economics of this country moving forward. And almost every single category of consumer goods, if Black folks took just a break from spending, it could shut the category down, right? It would literally move up the food chain inside of every one of these companies to say, oh wait, what just happened? Black people stopped buying X product, or Black people stop buying X category. And so we have so much more power than I think that we've ever than we sometimes feel. One of the things that always sticks out in my head to me, and it's Alice Walker said that the best way to take away people's power is to make them think that they don't have any, right? And I think that that's what one of the things is, that if we start to say collectively, hey, company X who shut down diversity, inclusion, and belonging, we believe that diversity, inclusion, and belonging is the pathway to get more Black people hired. We need to have more reciprocity with the brands that we buy things from, right? That we support. And so until you get that DEI officer back in there, we're just going to stop buying from this, right? And I think that that's a lever that we can pull. We have incredible epicenters of power as Black folks, right? We have the power of the ballot, right? We have the power of the wallet, and we have the power of our social currency, right? Our digital currency. We move conversation in digital spaces all the time in really meaningful ways. We have the power to make all kinds of people famous and wealthy just by how much we talk about them and how we use our voice to platform them. Imagine if we started making people who are doing actual community impact work? What if we made them as famous as some of these housewives, or if we made them as famous as, you know, some of these people who are saying crazy things about our communities and about the women in our communities or about our culture, right? And so I think that there's things that we can actually do to push back against the machine that is trying to force us out of these spaces.
Great information, man. I was just kind of warming you up a little bit. I saw the DEI, and then I work for the news. I was looking at our governor shutting down DEI jobs in my state, and I said, man, you know what? I normally throw an alley-oop, but I'm gonna just drop him in the fire and see if he can cook in this catfish grease. And you did a great
We
job. So
love catfish in Mississippi, man. So
I'm in Florida, so if you got the bird, we eat grouper, but I'm gonna slow it down real quick. I love this conversation, but I just kind of want to go back a little bit, man.
Yeah.
Mississippi native, living in Harlem, New York City, man. LinkedIn career expert. LinkedIn. A lot of y'all paying for LinkedIn. Don't act like y'all don't know about it. Y'all be hitting me up. LinkedIn. This brother did DEI for Facebook, global communications for Nielsen, degrees from Morehouse. Come on, man. This Black Men Sundays, we bringing them out. So here's my next question for you, man. First off, I want to jump into the social currency realm, but let's clear what is social currency. Let's just, because a lot of brothers, we be acting like, oh yeah, I know what that is, but we don't really know what is social currency. And then I got like 5 more questions for you. Go ahead.
So the way we think about social currency, and the way I usually talk about social currency is really about building strong relationships, particularly strong relationships at work, about how you start to say, okay, sometimes, particularly in work situations, relationships will save you when sometimes results won't. I've seen plenty of people that have, maybe fallen down on what they delivered in terms of the work product, but they lived to fight another day because they had really great relationships. Now, what I'm not saying is that you should just trade on the currency of your relationships all the time, that you got to actually produce for people. You got to have some reciprocity in that relationship. But social currency is how you start to think, I'm going to build my network. I'm going to build up a community of people who are rooting for me to win. That's how I talk about social currency at work.
When we're talking about social currency, why is social currency a key to unlocking financial mobility?
Yeah, man. So I talk about this a lot because oftentimes we are socialized either by our friends or our families or our relatives to just go to work and just put your head down and just do the job, and then go so that you can go home and have a good life when you get home, right? That's survival. And what I want people, particularly Black people, to do is to start to figure out, like, we've been surviving, it's time to thrive, right? And part of that thriving is building that financial mobility, is building great careers, not just having a really good job, but building great careers. And the way I look at that is a lot of the jobs where we are, we get more opportunities when we have some modicum of visibility, right? When we actually are participating in culture at work. I oftentimes talk to younger people and they're like, yo, I'm not going to the office karaoke after work. Like, I've been at work all day. I'm going home. I'm not doing the social stuff at work with my coworkers. And what I say to them is that, hey, if you decide to do that, that's your decision. But a lot of times that after that, at that karaoke and after that karaoke is where people build those bonds and those relationships. And you're going to need bonds and you're going to need relationships at work. Now, what I'm not saying that that's invitation, or that my advice is for you to tap dance. I'm not saying don't tap dance, but tap in. And what I mean by tap in is, like, there's a huge difference between reading the room and just like trying to assimilate. Assimilation is exhausting. You don't need to do that. Like, it leaves no time for creativity and for innovation. And no matter how hard you try, you're never going to be the white dude in a cube next to you, right? But what I say about tapping in is go and start to build relationships. You can decide how much of yourself you bring to these spaces, right? You get to decide whether or not you participate. I tell young, I told this young woman the other day, I was like, go to the office, to the work after office karaoke, but that doesn't mean that you have to sing the Taylor Swift song just because that's the song all the white people know. You can still go sing the Beyonce song and be you, right? Like you can be authentic and still participate in things that are happening after work. And people say, well, look, I'm not getting paid for them hours after work, right? So why am I doing that? Well, here's the reason why I say that why you're doing that is that in workplace scenarios, you need to have people who are active, who actively know you and who care if you're there or not, right? And part of building networking is that building that community of people who want to see you win.
I want to stay on these social events for a minute. We
Yep.
just coming out of the holiday season. A lot of brothers hit me up. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna go to this karaoke. I'm gonna go to
Yep.
this social event. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
go to this party. But you know what? The Patron is flowing. My wife already told me. My wife keep it real with me. My
Yep.
man Kalali can know. My wife keep it real. My mom keep it all the way a buck. She says, "Listen, when
Yeah.
you go to these events, you have one drink, get some water, because when you're at work, they know you're Corey, you're black. With that Patron flows, you become blackety black, and they don't know you like that." I'm
Right.
just being real. This Black Men
That's
Sundays,
real.
right?
That's
So
real.
when we're at these social events, let's talk about, because yes, we're there to network, but at the same time, they walking around, they got the little hot dogs with the hot Cheetos mix on top, the Patron with the little one
Yeah.
ice cube in it. It just goes down so smooth.
Yeah.
So let's talk about being black at these events
Yeah.
and the do's and do nots, because I feel like sometimes we go to these events and then we come out blackety black, and then it's like, damn, we done messed our reputation up. They
Yeah.
don't even know me like that, but then I done showed out at this event. Let's talk about that on a professional level, though.
Oh, bruh. Listen, on the professional level, I say this all the time, is that don't let these companies tell you this line about bring your whole self to work, right? And I say all the time is like, yo, that's not what you need to do. My company does not need bottomless mimosa me at the office every day, right? And so what I say to people is you absolutely should go and participate in the social events, but keep in mind you are still at work, right? And so I tell young people you need to have a 2-drink max. And even that, you need to chase everyone with a bottle of water, right? Because you want to go and participate, but what you don't want to do is to go and let something slip out that maybe you wouldn't normally say, or to react to something that somebody else who maybe is on their 3rd drink is saying to you, that you still want to be able to have your job the next day, right? Like I used to joke all the time about, like, I would have this is like years ago, that my coworkers would wait until they were like 3 drinks in to be like, yo, I usually don't talk about this at work, but just so you know, I voted for Obama, right? Or something, like, and I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do with that, right? But I know that they're saying that because they're 3 drinks in. And what I will say to people is that, yo, you're there to meet people, to have a good time. You're there to information gather. You need to spend 80% of your time there information gathering, and 20% of that time information sharing, right? And so part of what you want to do is get to know people and let them get to know aspects of you and your personality, but save some soul to keep, like grandma says, right? The other thing that I think is really important about that is, like, it is work. So yeah, have a good time. But I even say this about going to big events, like, say, for instance, Afrotech. What I told all of the young Black folks that I mentor before they went to Afrotech, I was like, yo, this is not 401k Freaknik. You are not going to Afrotech to, to pop bottles and to do open bar. It's all going to be open bar. You are going there to build on your career, to meet interesting people, to let people know that you exist in the world. You don't want to leave that party with, you don't want to leave there with only people knowing that, oh, he a hand drinker, right? You need to leave that party with people knowing what your superpower is. Oh, I code. Or, oh, I work on these things. I'm interested in this, right? You can have a good time, but keep in mind, it is still work, and you have to move accordingly, right? Because I'm the first one to admit, when, when I got a couple of drinks in me, the last thing that you see about me is my resume when I'm a couple drinks in, right? And what I think that I want people, particularly young Black folks, to understand, particularly younger folks, because they may see their non-Hispanic white counterparts 4 or 5 drinks in having a real good time, right? But what I want them to know is that people will still look at you differently. You are still Black operating in white spaces. Build on the social currency, but also understand that racism does not just magically disappear when drinks start flowing or when you walk into your office or a work scenario, if that makes sense.
No, great information, man. Because I've not to put myself out there, but I've been in a situation where it was all Black professionals.
Yeah.
So I walked in, I was like, wow, we all in here. So I kind of let loose a little bit and
Yeah.
let loose a little too much. But let's keep this thing going, man. I just wanted to get that some clarification
Yeah.
on it. So let's get into these numbers real quick. Over 40% of Black professionals feel underpaid, right? 90% are thinking about changing jobs in 2024. Now, we're talking about Black men, Black women. Also, I was looking at, a lot of Black professionals are trying to negotiate salaries because they feel underpaid. So it's kind of a double question for you. The first question is over 40% of Blacks feel underpaid. What can we do about that? Then the second half of that question is it safe to go to your boss and say, hey, I'm underpaid? Because I feel like if I go to my boss and say I'm underpaid, she'll be like, man, get out of here. Especially when we're talking about salaries and
Mhm.
benefits. But seriously, for brothers out here that really feel that they're underpaid, like how do you confidently negotiate that? Because I feel like, you go in there, you say the wrong thing, or you come off a little harsh, or you come off soft, they're not gonna take you seriously. So how can we confidently do that?
Yeah, man. I would say the number one thing that you can do for yourself if you do feel like that you're underpaid is have a fact-based conversation about why you feel like you're underpaid, right? Like one of the first things that I learned in the art of negotiation is that I don't negotiate with my feelings, I negotiate with facts, right? So what I would say to anybody who comes in is do a little bit of research about what the market bears for the work that you're currently doing, right? And if you feel like that you want to sort of begin that process of negotiating for a raise, most negotiations are really performance arts, man. And so you gotta go to be confident, you gotta practice on somebody, right? Like you gotta have somebody in your network, somebody who's like a mentor or somebody that operates in similar spaces that you can say, hey, let me practice and prepare for this negotiating conversation, right? So that you do feel more confident and use language that really focuses on why you deserve a raise and not why you need one or why you want one, right? The language that you use is really important because, again, that I need a raise or I want a raise is very feelings based. Why you deserve a raise is very fact based, right? Here's what I have. You need to know one, have a little bit of research on what the market bears, right? Like what's competitive for the market for your skill set at the level that you are, right? Maybe it is that you need a promotion so that you can be promoted and get paid for the work and the work caliber that you're doing. But you got to have your list of like, here's my accomplishments, here's my impact, here's what I do, and why I feel like why I actually deserve a raise, and what this impact looks like. And so that language really matters. And remember, it's okay to humble brag when you're having that conversation, particularly with a manager when you're talking about why you should be compensated differently. Be ready to talk about your accomplishments. Be ready to talk about the impact that you made and that you will continue to make. All of that positive impact, that's really important. The other thing I would say is that if you don't feel confident in negotiating, there are definitely, and I would say this even if I didn't, get a check from LinkedIn on the 1st and the 15th. There are definitely like LinkedIn learning courses where you can actually like go and take like a short course on here's the art of negotiation. Here's a learning course on how to negotiate better and negotiate differently. The biggest thing I think though that gets you to a different space when you really feel like that you want to get more cash and get more of the bag is you really need to, I can't say this enough, is that your network matters. Having having other people that you can talk to about money, particularly other people that you can trust in your same industry and field. For me, um, peer-to-peer mentorship has changed my life in terms of talking to other people about compensation and about money, particularly about money at work. And I know it can feel weird sometimes to say that because we're socialized to be very sort of secretive about money, how much money we're making or how much money we have. Is a lot of ego and shame tied up in money. I grew up upper middle class, right? But when my parents in our household, money was grown folks' business, right? And so my parents didn't really talk to me about the L's that they took financially or how much money they made. You know, their biggest advice to me largely was is to spend less than you make and save some for a rainy day, right? Now that's great, but my dad had said, before you lease that car, you need to really know how many miles you're gonna be driving because that lease it could actually jack you up on the back end. It's a low note now, but like here's my experience with that, right? We gotta get to a space, I think, where we're less secretive about money and not competitive with each other about money. Because one thing about me, if one of my boys says, yo, I'm thinking about going to this particular company, I'm thinking, who do I know that works there? Who can I ask them, right? Yo, he's thinking about going here. What do you think? This is the job that he's coming in at. What do you think that that the most competitive is? What's the top of the pay band for that? And I got friends that'll be like, oh, let me shoot you my offer letter that they offered me 3 years ago. Word? Okay. Now you have different levels of information inputs, right? And so I think that what we all have to do is to start building out a network that looks like a personal board of directors, right? If you're the CEO of you, every CEO has a board of directors. And what I look at for somebody and to add to my board of directors is somebody that's like, okay, this person has more experience than me. The first time I had a job where I had to negotiate for stock, I was online looking up what does RSU stand for, right? It was RSUs in my offer letter and I didn't know what they were. I didn't know what a restrictive stock unit was. I didn't understand what a vesting period was, right? And so I had to call somebody who could explain it to me. And it was another brother. He was older and he was like, this seems low. What they're offering you seems low. And I was like, word? It was more than anybody had ever offered. I had never been offered none before. So I was like, anything is better than what I've been getting before, which was zero, right? He was like, you should ask for more. You should ask him about what the range is for this role. And when I asked him what the range for restricted stock units was for the role, I was at the bottom of it. And so I didn't talk to them about me negotiating, like, here's why I think I should be at the top of the range. It was a series of maybe 2 conversations, but they gave me closer to the top of the range. I didn't even know what they were before I had a conversation with somebody else who was willing to information share with me. And information sharing is how we get to wealth and how we get to better financial, not just security, but mobility is information sharing.
And let's talk about that 90% of Black professionals are thinking about changing jobs in 2024. A lot of brothers,
Yeah.
you get comfortable, you've been there for a while, you kind of, you wake up, you kind of know what you're doing, get off at the same time. But 90% are thinking about changing jobs. I mean, I know brothers that are like, when I was in my 20s, 30s, this was fun. I had a great time, but I've
Yep.
grown. I'm not feeling that anymore. I don't
Yep.
want to do that. It's taking a toll on my body. It's just, my mental health isn't right. So let's talk about the 90% that are thinking about changing jobs in 24.
Yeah, man. I think that, listen, this is 90% is high, right? And this is people who are just considering it. But I feel like that it's really important right here because a lot of people are considering changing these jobs largely because of money and finances, right? Like we can look around like, yeah, we are at record low unemployment for African Americans, but Black folks are still feeling like, yo, I feel like I need to might make a move so I can get to more money. So literally the number one reason is more money, right? They want to make more money. The number two reason is that many feel like that they are just not being fully appreciated at work. And so I think that rationale is people are saying, look, I kind of stayed in place and kept my head down through this pandemic because let me just get this, let me just get in here. I'm making money. I don't want to change up in the middle of this pandemic, right? That we have come out of the pandemic and people are getting more antsy about looking for work. And I think that I honestly think that that's a good thing that people are starting to consider it. What I would say to people, anybody that's considering a job move, is that it's highly competitive right now. It's really competitive. If you and I were having this conversation 12 months ago, I would have told you there are 2 job openings for every applicant on LinkedIn right now. Today, there are 2 applicants for every job. That's not to say that people shouldn't start to look. They shouldn't start asking questions. They shouldn't start doing research and thinking about, okay, what if I make a move? What's my next move going to be? Where would I go? But it's going to be competitive. And a couple of things that I think that are really helpful for people if you are in a job market or you're thinking about jumping in is the way people are sourcing talent now is very specific. They're sourcing talent based on skills. It is skills, skills, skills. And that means that you have to have skills on your resume. You have to be able to talk about your skills and how you use those skills. You have to actually then, if you and I think everybody should be on LinkedIn. I get again. I would say this even if they didn't pay me, because every 6 seconds, I mean, like literally every 6 seconds, somebody gets a job on LinkedIn, right? So it's an incredible tool that almost every company, even mid-sized and small companies, are using to source talent. And the number one way that they search for it is by looking for your skills, even more than educational attainment. Everybody from the president of the United States to CEOs are now talking about fewer 4-year degree requirements on jobs and mostly now listing out the skills. And I think that, listen, I'm gonna always like stand for educational attainment. But I do think that there are a lot of ways to get skills that we should also be considering and thinking about. Even if you already have a good job, making sure that your skills are on point, that you're still growing your skills, because the skills required to do your job change about 20% every year. So in 5 years, if you've been in that same job for 5 years, your job is very different than it was today than it was 5 years ago. So even if you aren't changing jobs, your job is changing on you. And you got to think about how you do those, how you like keep your skills sharp and keep your skills in tune with what people are hiring for in the market. And the number one skills that people are looking for right now, even in this age of AI, are people skills, human skills, communication, teamwork, leadership, management, those being analysis. The number one thing that we hear recruiters telling us all the time now is that communication is the number one most in demand skill for the 3 years in a row for LinkedIn most in demand skills. We talk about it all the time, is that everybody from the CEO to the intern, people are looking for people who can present, who can write, who can make a strong argument that's fact based. Communication is the number one thing, and they're saying that a lot of people coming out of undergrad aren't good communicators. They can't write. They can't write a succinct email, right? And we got to like start have that conversation. So if you see that these are skills gaps, here's how you fill them.
Great information. I'm about to let my brothers talk to you, but
Yeah.
I'm in Iverson mode right now, so I kind of got one more real quick. So I know my man
Yeah.
Kalali. I see my man Kalali back there with the purple shirt. I see him back there. He waiting to rock. But here's the question that I have for you, man, because
Yeah.
especially coming out of the pandemic, man, I saw a lot of brothers where you're in job positions where okay, they may have let some people go, but now you're picking up that person's job duty in addition to yours,
Yeah.
but you're not seeing any currency flowing in your bank account every 2 weeks that you should be. So how do you stay mentally prepared and not say, man, you know what? They need to be giving me more money because I'm doing this person's job and that person's job, but I'm making what I made when I got here.
The number one thing is that have you made that clear to them, right? So the thing that I always say to people is that you are the CEO of you, right? And so nobody's going to stop doing what they're doing at their job, even your manager, and say, huh, I wonder if we thought about exactly what Drew is doing and how much more he's doing today than he was doing yesterday. So what I say to people all the time is like, the first thing you got to do is you can't hold somebody responsible for doing something for you that they don't know that you need done, right? And so you got to communicate to managers as like, hey, our next conversation and our next one-on-one, let's talk about where my job was 6 months ago and what my job is right now, what I've delivered on, and how much more work that I'm actually doing. Because if I'm not going to get paid more, then we need to talk about how I actually prioritize what I should be doing every day if my compensation is going to stay the same. And oftentimes that conversation can go a lot better than you think, right? Because you got to let people know what the situation is if you want them to do something about it. And you have to tell them what your preference is, right? So I have to actively communicate, I'm doing more. Here's what I'm doing. Here's the caliber that I'm delivering on it. And the scenario I would love to see happen is for me to I'm doing 20% more work than I was doing 6 months ago, 12 months ago. I would like to see at least 10 to 20% more in my compensation. Otherwise, your boss might say, oh, well, you're doing all this work. Take this off, take this off, take this off. And maybe that's what you want, is to do less work. Or maybe you're like, okay, I actually like what I'm doing. I just want to get paid better, right? So you got to also tell people what you want in the process too.
But what about the fear aspect? Whereas, they may have let some folks go to
Yeah.
save some money. I'm still here. I don't feel comfortable asking for more money, even though I'm doing more work, because I don't want to be the next one on the chopping block. The inflation's out of control. Me and the wife go have one drink and an appetizer. It's like $30. You're like,
It's
well, I
like
ain't even
30
gave a
bucks.
tip yet. You're like, whoa. But at the same time, brothers tell me they don't want to hear the job telling them, well, hey, you still lucky you employed here. So how does that fear aspect kick in with you being confident to have a negotiation conversation?
That's a real question. And I think that what part of it is it comes down to that point of, at what point are you tired of feeling like that? Right. And I think that, for me, I recently got married. So my tolerance for being underpaid just got significantly lower. Now I have to start asking questions about my income and about my salary, even questions that I'm uncomfortable with, right? And I think that the person on that who's in that situation or in that dilemma is that people talk about money all the time. They talk about money in every aspect all the time. And so this, I think you've got to get to a space to where talking about how much money you make, or how much money that you feel like how much money you feel you deserve, is a conversation that you're going to have throughout your career, because you're going to get paid for all the while you're working. The more you get comfortable talking about that compensation, the better you are going to be in your career long term. It's hard, but again, I think that it's a performance art. You got to practice it, and practice with somebody that you respect, who respects you, another person who's a professional that can understand your industry. And they may say, yo, if you came to my office and asked me about money like this, I would tell you, go back to your desk, right? You need somebody that will be able to say that to you. And then you'll be able to say, but why? Oh, it's like, oh, because you didn't give me any facts. What's the facts? Okay, you feel like you're working more, but are you really? Right? Let me poke some holes in that so that you are confident when you have that conversation, right? I think that that's where you got to go. The fear piece is gonna be there, but are you more afraid of the mental health toll that it's gonna take on you to be feeling like you're getting played every day? And what is it worth to you? Is it worth to have that conversation? Do you truly believe that your work value is as good as this that you're currently getting, or not? Is it like, Because nobody, listen, we're all doing work wrong if you only like your job on the 1st and the 15th. If you only feel valued on the 1st and the 15th, we doing jobs wrong. And maybe that's an indication. If you feel like that, I'm gonna ask you about pay and I'm gonna get fired, you should already start looking for another job, because you should be able to go in to another adult, another professional, and have a conversation about how much money you make if you working every day. If you have that much fear about what your job is going to do to you, then that job has too much power over your life. I would say you got to start looking somewhere else where you can have a little bit more reciprocity and a little bit more mutual respect. Because if you're that expendable, or if you feel like that's how they feel about you, you need to already be looking for another gig, because that gig has way too much power over your life.
Wow.
Jobs are supposed to give you agency. They're not supposed to give you shackles. And we got it wrong in how we're thinking about it sometimes, is that these jobs, you cannot let these jobs rob you of your agency, of your women, your edges, brothers, your hairline, your mental health, all of those things. Most jobs are vehicles and not destinations. And the minute we start thinking about them as destinations and not vehicles, then that job has way too much control over our lives, right? Of course, we all need to get paid so that we can take care of our households, ourselves, and our families. But once we get in that mental shackle of this job is my source and my supply, we've already lost. That's my thinking about it, man. I think it's a shift in how we change our minds about work.
It's a Black Man Sunday. Time to put all childish things away. I refuse to be the man I was yesterday. Gotta put my best foot forward and elevate. It's a Black Man Sunday. Time to put all childish things away. I refuse to be the man I was yesterday. Gotta put my best foot forward and elevate. It's a Black Man